Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about culture, its elements, and also why culture is important in agriculture extension. So let us start with our lesson. Culture has been defined in a number of ways. Some of these definitions are given below. To Sorokin, culture stands for the moral, spiritual, and intellectual attainments of man. That means that culture it represents the way in which the person are behaving, their wrong ways or good ways of behaving in the society, their spiritual, that is their beliefs, and also the thinking power of the man. David Whitney defines the culture as the self-cultivation of the natural geographical environment. He says that culture is a product of agrofacts. The agrofacts are the products of cultivation, which is related to agriculture. It represents the artifacts that is a product of industries, which is related to the material things. Then the social facts, which is a social organization, and the manufacts, which is related to language, religion, art, etc. According to Max Seaver, culture is the expression of our nature in our modes of living and our thinking. How we express ourselves of our nature in every ways. Example in our literature, in religion, in recreation, and in enjoyment. All these things represent or show or define as the culture. Culture is a term that refers to a large and diverse set of mostly intangible aspects of social life. According to sociologists, culture consists of the values, beliefs, system of language, communication, and practice that people share in common and that can be used to define them as a collective. Culture also includes the material objects that are common to that group or society. Culture is distinct from social structure and economic aspect of the society, but it is connected to them both continuously, informing them and being informed by them. In sociology, the word culture is used to denote acquired behaviors. Acquired behaviors are those behaviors that we learn. These are not the inborn or innate behavior. A culture is not a biological term. Culture is an acquired behavior. We learn through our experiences from our forefather, and also we will keep on spreading and transmit this culture to the future generation. The essential point in culture is that it is acquired by man as a member of the society and persists through tradition. Characteristic of culture. It is important to remember that culture is learned through language and modeling others. It is not genetically transmitted. Culture is not innate. The traits are learned through the socialization, through habits, through thoughts. Number 2, we have culture is social and not individual heritage of man. That means that our culture is a social product. We share it among the members of the group. It is not simply for one individual. A single person cannot represent a culture. It is shared among the society. Number 3, culture is idealistic. That means it's having the sum total of all the ideas, such as the symbols, the language, the norms, the beliefs, the rituals. Then we have culture is the total social heritage. Like I have said, the culture is embodied with the ideas and norms of the group, and then it is linked with the past. Culture is a total social heritage which is linked with the past. The past endures because it lives in the culture. It is passed from one generation to another generation. All the traditions, the custom, the norms, the beliefs, the mores, the taboos are already in the culture because it is passed from one generation to another generation. Next we have culture fulfill some needs. Culture fulfill all the ethical and the social needs of the group. Next we have culture is an integrated system. That means it possesses all the orders and system. Its various parts are integrated with each others. All the elements of culture that we introduce is also integrated along with that. Language is the chief vehicle of culture. Culture enables the man to transmit what he has learned from the past and enable him to transmit it the same wisdom to the upcoming generation. The language that you have learned now is what your parents has learned from their parents. So it represents the past, the present, and also the future. Now let us see what is ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is the tendency of the society to consider its own culture as best and others as inferiors. It is a feeling whereby the natives come to despise foreigners and feel superior to them. This term was described by William Graham Sumner in the year 1906. Involves a belief or attitude that one's own culture is better than all others. Almost everyone is a little bit ethnocentric. We cannot deny of the fact that we are a little bit ethnocentric. For example, if you go to America, another part of the country, which is not India, you will see that people are driving on the left side. But here in India, we people are driving on the right side of the road. So people will say, if being an Indian, we will say that we are riding or driving on the right side, they are driving on the wrong side. This is how our ethnocentric attitude happen. We often think that our culture, our way of eating, our way of dressing, our way of talking, our language is better as compared to the other languages of the world. That is how we are ethnocentric in nature. Next, we have the functions of culture. Culture is important for individual and group, so one has to consider the function of the culture and the two heads, for individual and for group. Importance of culture to individual is that it makes a human being regulate his conduct and prepare him for his group life. You are taught in your family to behave well with other people. The way you talk, the way you represent to the people outside has been taught in your culture. Culture provides the set of behavior even for complicated situations. Through culture, it influences a man to react automatically in the situation and doesn't make the situation awkward, or it doesn't make the situation worse or complicated. For example, now, if you're walking on the road, you bumped into someone. Instead of fighting or arguing, if you will just say sorry, your problem will be solved. That is how the culture taught you to behave yourself towards other fellow. Next, we have culture provide traditional integration to certain situations. It helped an individual to believe in a situation by integrating some values, some norms. It can be a superstitious belief, but it provides this traditional orientation to a certain individual. Example, like if a cat crosses his way, he postponed the journey. This traditional interpretation differs from culture to culture. Why culture is important for the group? Number one, culture keeps social relationships intact. It is important not only for the man but also for the group. Had not been there no culture, by now we must have not known how to interact with other people. If you don't have a language, how will you interact with people? If you don't know how to behave, how will you interact or regulate your behavior towards other people? How will you show your attitudes toward other people? In fact, life would have been poor, nasty, brutish, and short if there has been no culture regulations. It is culture which keeps all social relationships intact. It brings together the individuals in the group. Culture broadens the vision of individual. Culture has given a new vision to the individual by providing him a set of rules for the cooperation of the individuals. It provides him the concept of the family, state, nation, and classes and makes possible the coordination and division of the labor. It broadens your concept, your way of thinking about the family, about the outside world. It gives you the ability to think, the intellectual ability of a person to think is in our culture. It makes us to think much better about the world around us through our culture. Culture creates a new need. It helps in creating the new thirst for new needs, new drives. It satisfies the aesthetic, the moral, and religious interests of the member of the group. In this way, group owe much to the culture. Now let us see the elements of culture. The first type is a non-material culture. Non-material are those which we cannot see, which we cannot touch, but it is there. Example like the values, beliefs, symbols, and language. Then the second type is a material culture. These are the physical objects which you can see, which you can also touch. For example, like the tools and technology, clothing, eating, utensil, means of transportation, etc. Symbols. Number one we have is the symbols. Every culture is filled with symbols or things that stand for something else and that often evoke various reactions and emotions. Some symbols are actually types of the non-verbal communication, while other symbols are in fact material objects. A symbol is the basic representation of the culture. It can be an object, a word, okay, or an action. So I will just give you an example of symbol. Let's say about this sign, okay. If I show you the V sign, it means, according to me, the V sign is a sign of peace, right, or victory. This is the representation of one of the symbol. Or it can be an action where, suppose now I'm saying yes. In my culture, when we say yes, we used to nod our head yes, and if I say no means okay, I'm doing like this. But in the South Indian culture, I've seen that when they say yes, they will do like this, yes, okay, and then they will say no. I don't know, they are shaking their head, something like that. That no, it is not a little bit, yes, and then no, okay, they do it like that. So different symbols represent different types of your own culture. It is a unique way of representation your own culture. It can be this, okay, this is a pranam, okay, or it can be a namaste, okay, or it can be, okay, some people say this is for me, being a Christian, for me this is a, when we pray, we hold our hand and this is a symbol of praying. But according to other religion or other culture, this can be a namaste, right? Everything that one does in their life is based on symbols. Symbolism is the way of abstracting of ideas and concepts, and these symbols are passed from generation to generation. How did I learn how to use such type of symbols? I learned it because somebody has taught it to me. I learned it within my society. I've seen my elders did that. That is how I learned. Okay, so let us see now what are the other elements of culture. Next element we have in culture is language. Perhaps our most important set of symbols is language. In English, the word chair means something we sit on. In Spanish, the word silla means the same thing. As long as we agree how to interpret these words, a shared language and the society are possible. By the same token, differences in language can make it quite difficult to communicate. For example, imagine you are in a foreign country where you do not know the language and the country's citizens do not know yours. Worse yet, you forgot to bring your dictionary that translates their language into yours and vice versa. And your iPhone battery has died. You become lost. How will you get help? What will you do? Is there any way to communicate your plight? Think about this and then comment in the comment box. What will you do? So language is one of the most important elements of the culture, and it is a chief vehicle of a culture, as I have discussed previously. Norms. Culture differs widely in their norms or standards and expectation for behaving. We have already seen in our society the nature of the drunkard behavior depends on society expectation of how people should behave when drunk. Norms of drunken behaviors influence how we behave when we drink too much. Norms are often divided into two types, that is the formal norms and the informal norms. The formal norms, also called as the mores and laws, refers to the standards of behavior considered the most important in any society. Example in the United States includes traffic laws, criminal codes, and in college contexts, student behavior codes addressing such things as cheating and hate speech. Informal norms, also called as folkways and customs, refers to the standard of behavior that are considered less important but still influence how we behave. Table manners are a common example of informal norms, as are such everyday behavior as how we interact with the cashier and how we write in an elevator defines the informal norms. Next we have is the rituals. Different cultures also have different rituals or established procedures and ceremonies that often mark transition in the life course. As such, ritual both reflect and transmit a culture norms and other elements from one generation to the next. Graduation ceremonies in colleges and universities are familiar example of time-honored rituals. Rituals example we have like the different rituals in marriage, then when one died, okay, when one died. So there are different rituals these rituals differ from society on society. Then we have values. Values are another important element of culture and involves judgment of what is good or bad, undesirable or undesirable. The values are what we are considered as good or bad in our society, whether they are desirable or undesirable. When we value something, we make them so attached to us. We really value our language, we value our traditional dress, but we are not considering the other types like the Western language as valuable as compared to our traditions or our original language. So these are simply the elements in which we judge and take them as whether they are good or bad for us. Next we have is the artifacts. Artifacts or material object. These constitute the material of the culture. In the most simple societies, artifacts are largely limited to a few tools. Example, the hut people live in and the clothing they wear. Artifacts represent the material object, something that you can see and you can touch. It can be a historical place, it can be the houses of the people, it can be the clothing that you wear. Cultural diffusion. Cultural diffusion is the process by which the cultural traits invented or discovered in one society are spread directly or indirectly to the other society. It is the spread of the cultural beliefs and social activities from one group of the people to another. Through cultural diffusion, horizons are broadened and people become more culturally rich. For example, now, Christianity was first started in Israel. Now it has been spread to the other part of the world. Also, Islam, when it was started in a place called Mecca. Now you can see Islam has been followed by many people in the different parts of the world. Also, let us see the example of the culture diffusion in the term of music. When the music was first started, the spread of music throughout the world. We can say that for the jazz started in the US as a blend of African and European musical tradition. Now it is enjoyed by the whole world and the people are making different variations within the genre. The following are the influential factors to the process of diffusion. These influential factors leads to the diffusion of the culture. Example, relation and communication. When you have a relationship and a communication with the other members of the society, your culture will get diffused. The need and desire for new traits. When you want a new traits or you desire for the changes of your society, of your culture, that is where the other culture got diffused. Then another influential factor of cultural diffusion is competition with the old traits. We feel that we don't need the old traits anymore, it's how the new traits will come, and there is a competition. For example, now our fashion, our way of dressing is competing with the new trend that is going on. This is how the competition of the old traits and the new traits occur, and they diffuse into our culture. Next is the respect and recognition of those who bring the new traits. If we respect and we recognize some of the culture of other people, we also tend to follow their culture. That is how the cultural diffusion in our society occurs. A cultural diffusion may be incidental or bidirectional. Whenever a person migrates from one culture area to another, he carried the culture patterns with him. Cultural diffusion by direction is normally done either by sending missionaries or by colonization. Example, like I've said previously, that in our culture, when we talk and about the culture in our society, we are following the Western culture. In my culture, we are following the Western culture because of the missionaries that came to India, and they diffuse to us the culture. They bring along with them the culture, and we tend to follow their culture out of respect of those people who brought the culture along with them. Another term we have is a cultural lag. What is a cultural lag? This means that some part of the people culture do not change as the other traits. It means that one or more phases of culture have moved ahead and that all other phases are lagging behind. Example, the changes in the material and the non-material is what we call as a cultural lag. Marginal man. A marginal man is a person who is living in two cultures. He is likely to occupy not the center of either but by the margins of both. Example, if your father is from North India and your mother is from South India, you are the marginal man. You are in between your parents, your mom and your dad. You are not following your father culture nor you are following your mom culture. You are in between the two culture. So you will be termed as a marginal man. Then custom. Custom are socially prescribed form of behavior transmitted by tradition. Custom regulates the whole of man action, his bathing, his washing, his cutting his hair, eating, drinking, etc. Customs are well established and difficult to change. Let us see some of the classification of custom. We have seen the classification of norms. These comes under the formal and the informal norms. So let us see the classification of custom as well, which is also under the topic. Like we have the folkways, which is also there in norms. We also have the mores and the taboos. We have the conventions, and we also have the rituals, which is the rituals, the norms, the symbols, the language, and the artifacts, which are the elements of the culture. Custom also form under the one of the element of culture that is under the norms. Number one we have is the folkways and usage. The folkways are the approved form of behavior for specific situation. This is expected way in which a person ought to behave. It arises without prior intention. Example, petty acts. Observation of folkways is not a must, so violation of folkways are not punishable severely. Example now, the folkways is also different from culture to culture. Example now, in your culture, the folkways, when you enter someone's house. In my culture, if we enter into the house of anyone, if we will go and visit them, we have to take off our shoes if our shoes are dirty, right? So that shows that we are showing that we are acting in a behavior which is according to the specific situation. Then it might also differ in our way of acting towards the situation according to culture to culture. Another example of the folkways that I can give is the married Hindu women. Usually they wear a Mangal Sutra. It doesn't matter if she wear or if she don't want to wear it, but then it is expected by the society, since she is married, that she should wear the Mangal Sutra, right? And then also Namaste with joint palm, or cleaning your hands before taking foods. These are some of the common examples that the folk ways we are behaving in the society. Next is we have the convention. Convention are not punished severely. It is a way in which a person is expected to behave. This is another customary way of behaving in the society. Example, wearing clothes in public. Be polite to others, eating using knife, fork and spoon instead of hand or fingers. People care for adoption. Convention are less violated than the folk ways. Then we have the mores and taboos. Mores are the positive action, what ought to be done. Please keep in your mind, what ought to be done is a mores, like standing when the national anthem is played or saluting the flag. Then the taboos. Taboos are the negative action which are ought not to be done, which is considered as wrong by the society. Example like you should not smoke in front of the elders. You should not say bad words in front of the elders. And when the teachers will come to the class, you should not sit, but instead you should stand. These are some of the taboos that we are having in our society. Then rituals. As I have explained, these rituals are differ from society to society and from culture to culture. These are simply the pattern of performing some ceremonies. Example like performing a marriage ceremonies or performing a rituals when the newborn baby is there, or the rituals which we have performed during when somebody is sick. There might be some rituals where we call the priest to perform in order to cast away the sickness from the bodies of the individual. So rituals are different from society to society. Role of culture in agriculture. Learning the custom, folk ways, mores, taboos of a group of the people will help one to predict what they will do in a given situation. Without such predictability, expectations of what the others could do in a given situation, the result will be chaos in the society. Culture is not static but dynamic. It keeps on changing because of the internal and external forces. Development programs are such external forces which changes the culture of the society. Hence, it is important for an extension worker to understand this fact. It is important for an extension worker to understand the culture of the society. Before implementing the program, you need to understand how the people culture are. Do not blindly go and implement any program which is against the norms, the beliefs of the people. You have to see whether that program will change the people perception or not, whether it will change their attitude, their understanding towards the thing that is going around or not. The scientific understanding of the culture of the people among whom extension worker operates is the basic to effective performance of his function. If caste structure is there in the village, study the caste system and function. This is how you should do being an extension workers, being the person who will serve for the society. You have to go along with the culture of the people so that your work will align with what the people needs in the society. Then functions of culture. Culture provides a series of patterns whereby the biological demand of the group members can be met. Example for sustenance, shelter and reproduction. Culture plays an important role in an individual so that he can interact and have a good relationship with the people among his group members. Culture provides a set of rules to ensure the cooperation of the individuals of the group in adjusting the environmental situation. The group is thus able to act in a certain situation as a unit. Number 3, culture provides channels of interaction for the individuals within the group through language, through your way of acting, doing things together, your actions. It provides a channel of interaction for the individuals within the group. Culture provides methods of adjustment of the group to its external and internal needs. It provides a pattern for the development of an individual. Next, we have for the individual in the society, culture provides a ready-made adjustment to a number of situations. A series of familiar stimuli to the individual to which he has only to respond in a familiar way. For example, if you bumped into someone in the market, you will automatically say sorry to that person because your culture has taught you to behave polite towards other, and if you make any mistake you will say sorry to the people. This is how the culture function within an individual within the group. It helps the person to be together with the group members, to form a unit with the group members, to adjust within any of the environmental situation. It provide an interaction of the individuals within the group. It provide an adjustment to any of the changes that might have occurred in the society. So these are the basic functions of culture in the society. So I hope you are clear with what is culture, its importance, the functions, the elements of culture. If you are still having a doubt or you don't understand about the topic, you can type your question in the comment box and I will discuss it with you in the upcoming class. Until then, I'll see you in the next class. Bye bye.